Welcome to the Bushido Gang. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Attack on Samurai, bringing you all my final Pokemon Sword and Shield review for Pokemon Showdown. So just competitive wise. Now this is only going to be for OU, since this is, the popular generation. I'll give my final thoughts on the other tiers towards the end of the video. But yeah, so I'm going to be talking about the Sword and Shield OU metagame from the beginning all the way to where it is now, the end. So, one thing I will say that Sword and Shield did very well with is basically the different kind of metas that we could play with the Pokemon that were introduced. I actually kind of liked how Game Freak did that. Where they added, old bonds back, for each cycle of the DLC. I think that was a really good thing, actually. Now, it would be really cool if, one day we do have a game where all the mons are available. That would be a blessing. Honestly, I have no idea when we're going to be seeing that, but hopefully that will be before the Switch's a life cycle ends. But if not, then it is what it is. But honestly, I really do think that Game Freak's just being lazy with how they want to do, or how they want to implement mods into the games and whatnot. But that's a topic for a different day. Anyways, before we get started, please make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, the Bushido Gang, and subscribe for some more content on the channel. And yeah. So this is, like I said, my last Sword and Shield video. After this, I will be talking about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And yeah, Gen 9 stuff, man. Can't believe it's coming out tomorrow as I'm recording this. So yeah, I'm going to try and get this up before I leave for work. By the time this video goes up, I probably should be on my way to work. But yeah, I'm going to try and get this video up as soon as I can. Anyways, so let's get this started. Because, let me tell you, this is going to be a long video. So get your popcorn, get some water, I don't know, get whatever you can. Because I'm going to be talking a lot and for a long time. So, Sword and Shield. This meta had 8 different metas in it. You got the Dynamax metagame, you got the post-Dynamax metagame, you got the home metagame, then you got the Isle of Armor metagame part 1 and 2. And then you got the Crown Tundra metagame, which is basically 3 parts. And then you got the Sword and Shield finale, which is where we are today. And then the finale part 2. But technically these guys are this is the same thing anyway. I just had to add more mons to it. But yeah. So let's get started, shall we? 2019 November 2019, this was the meta. This was the Sword and Shield metagame. So, in case you don't know what Dynamax does, basically what Dynamax does is that it makes your Pokemon very beefy. It also, makes them larger as well, kaiju size. You get a ton of HP and you get max moves. What these max moves do is that they cause different effects on the field. Max Lightning can cause electric terrain. What's it called? Max. I forgot what the max water move is called. But that move basically gives rain. Max Phantasm, lowers defense. There's different kinds of effects that happen with these moves. And there are some moves that actually boost your stats. So, for example, there was the Max Airstream, which basically boosted your speed, and that was very common for a lot of flying types. In this metagame, or in the beginning parts of the metagame. So there were a couple. So the Dynamax meta pretty much was basically for sweepers. It was built for sweepers. So one of the sweepers that really took on the mantle of the game was Gyarados. Gyarados was one of the most dominant Dynamax mons in the early part of the Sword and Shield metagame. So during the Dynamax meta, for OU anyway. I don't know if it was the same thing for VGC, but for OU, I know this is what this mon did. So it was very, very common. Or I mean, yeah, it was very, very common during the early parts of the metagame. Again, seeing this on a lot of hyper offense teams. So one of the ways to really combat these sweepers was Ditto. So what Ditto would do is that Ditto would copy said stats and could basically reverse sweep things. You could also Dynamax with it as well and be able to just, reverse sweep them back. But honestly, with a choice cover, you're better off doing that anyway. But still, the fact that Ditto could reverse sweep you is kind of what, made Dynamax not very healthy, or not healthy really, just copying stats and reverse sweeping things. So yeah, it eventually got out of hand, and Dynamax got banned. So again, Gyarados was one of the dominant sweepers back in the beginning of Sword and Shield. Then we had Barraskewda, which was the same thing as well. This one, I think this one also ran the same kind of set that Gyarados did. But the thing with Barraskewda that made it broken with Dynamax was the fact that it was a Swift Swim sweeper as well. So you can set up your own rain, and you're already faster than everything else on the field. So it was very problematic with this mon too. It also had close combat, which became Max Pummel, or like Max Knuckle or something like that. Max Knuckle, which boosted your attack. So this Pokemon hit very, very hard under rain, and again could just keep boosting its stats and just keep going crazy. So this mon pretty much didn't really have a whole lot of counterplay back then. Of course, there was stuff like Ferrothorn that were around, but really when it came to the base decks of Sword and Shield, there really weren't that many great water resists at the time. Again, besides Ferrothorn and what else was around at that time? I know Ferrothorn was the big one, but there were some other ones. But basically, you couldn't really cover for it that well. So Barraskewda kind of just smashed through it. Dragapult was another one as well. Dragapult was very good in the early metagame. Now for me though, when I was playing the Dynamax meta, I didn't really get like a whole lot of time with the Dynamax metagame. I didn't really get to see the full potential of it, but I do know that, again, like I said, sweepers were very dominant at that time. So stuff like DD Dragapult were very common as well. Even going back to VGC, because VGC kind of started it anyway. But you would even see some mons run weakness policy, because again, you have that really fat HP stat, so you could actually take a hit from something, get your weakness policy off, and just keep sweeping. So it was kind of the same thing that happened with Dragapult as well. So Dragapult would run like a weakness policy, or again even Barraskewda, or just any kind of sweeper would run the weakness policy and would just sweep at that point, basically. Yeah, Dragapult was another example of this. You would run like DD Life Orb and just spam Max Dragon or Max Ghost, and would just go from there pretty much. And there really wasn't much you could do to stop it. So it was very dominant at that time as well. A very, very dominant mon. Of course, there were checks to it, like Sucker Punch from Bisharp and whatnot. But besides that, though, this mon was very dominant in the early parts of the Dynamax metagame. Again, not a whole lot that could be done about it. And it pretty much was just one of the best sweepers at the time, along with Gyarados. So yeah. Again, the Dynamax meta was very short. It was I think the meta lasted for 2 weeks or something, 2-3 weeks. I think it barely got into a month when the meta dropped, or after the meta dropped. So yeah, it did not last that long. But yeah, that was the Dynamax metagame. So now we can move on to the post Dynamax metagame. So post Dynamax, this is where teams got very fat. Or where teams started to get fatter, and it just became a lot harder to take down. So we can start off with the first one right here. So Dynamax, post Dynamax part 1. So post Dynamax, pretty much a lot of players just opted to go off of other sets and just build differently. So again, a lot of teams just started to build bulkier stuff because the meta was just very powerful. Again, you had stuff like Dracovish, you had stuff like Gallagher, and even still DD Pult, or even Specs or Scarf Pult, because again, Scarf Pult was a thing in the early part of the meta. But you had stuff like that to really check out, or to really check for. Bisharp was also around as well, but again, it wasn't as prominent. But again, it was there. You also saw Rotom Heat, which again, like, just offensively broke a lot of teams. Like, it was very, very good during post Dynamax, and even during some parts of home, and even into Isle of Armor to some extent. But definitely, it was very dominant during the early parts of Sword and Shield. Again, late 2019, going to like mid 2020. This is where Rotom was at. Rotom was living the high life, and I'm gonna talk about it as soon as we get to it. But yeah. Like I said, teams got very defensive, got very, very bulky, so you saw a lot of cores like these with Corviknight, Toad, and Clef, which was pretty much like one of the dominant defensive cores you would see, or you would have seen a lot, again, during like late 2019, 2020, late 2019, early 2020, going into home, you would see cores like this, and again, they were very, very common, and they were pretty difficult to break down as well. Also, like, Clef used to run Unaware as well, which would cover for Rotom, and also cover for, like, other sweepers as well. So, again, it was very common for this to run Unaware, and even Magic Guard to some extent, too. But yeah. But Dracovish and Darm were the biggest, like, wall breakers in OU at the time. These guys were disgusting. I don't remember which one went first. I'm pretty sure it was Dracovish that went first before Darm. But I might be wrong about that. I might be wrong about that, because I think Dracovish lasted a little bit longer than Darm did. So if I recall, I think Darm got banned right before the home meta came out. Or it was like on the verge of getting banned right before a home meta. But basically, again, these guys were dominant. I'll talk about Darm first. So Galar Darm was a very powerful wall breaker, Basically, what its ability did was that it would give this Pokemon a base 1 or base, like, +1. It would give it +1 in its stats, and yeah, I mean, it would give it +1 in its attack, and essentially gives it a choice band. And this thing already hits very hard at 140, so when you add that +1 to it, yeah, that's going to be a lot of damage. That boy hits almost like 400 attack, just neutrally. But then with the +1, you're going like almost 600 base attack. So this thing was incredibly strong. Just neutral U-turns would do a lot to like everything. You would do like almost 40% to most things. Or even just kill most things too, especially if they're on the frailer side too. So yeah, U-turn was very free on this thing. You also got to see, Icicle Crash, flinching things a lot, because again, that 30% chance comes in clutch. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, like, this was the common set you would see a lot on Galar Darms. You would see, again, Icicle Crash, U-turn, Icicle Crash, U-turn, Earthquake, and then like Blitz or something. But yeah, it would basically run some set like this, and you would still just apply a lot of pressure with this thing. Sometimes you could put zero power over it, but yeah, honestly, Crash, U-turn, Quake, and Blitz is all you need, or was all you really needed on this thing. You would just kind of dominate a lot of mons. One thing I will say is that this mon broke this core very easily. This core would get destroyed by Darm. So yeah. Defensively, there weren't that many options around Darm anyway to begin with. There was Rotom Heat, which is actually a pretty good check to it, and also Rotom Wash as well. But the difference between Rotom Wash and Rotom Heat was that Rotom Heat could take every coverage from Darm, but Rotom Wash did not like taking a U-turn, especially with Rocks Down. So with Rocks Down, you're taking 12%. With a U-turn chip, you're taking like almost 30. So the Mon would essentially get 3 KO'd with Rocks Down with U-turn chip. So it was very, very powerful. Again, just breaking through a lot of walls. There really weren't that many walls to check this thing in OU in the early parts of it, post Dynamax. So that's kind of why this Mon had to go, because there was no defensive check that could actually take it on and like be able to live from it. Again, like I said, the Galar Dex was very, very I want to say bland. I kind of want to say bland. I think bland might be the right word for it, but there really weren't that many defensive checks to it. So the Mon just kind of took the meta over, really. And that's kind of what happened to it. That's essentially what happened. There weren't that many there weren't that many revenge killers back then as well. Like one of the best revenge killers was Dragapult, which is why you would see it be scarfed, because again, Darm was scarfed. So you would see that, and that was pretty much it. Yeah, there weren't that many. Again, the meta was very bulky and was fairly slow, so you really didn't see a whole lot of revenge killers that were fast enough to take on Darm besides Dragapult. There were priority options though. You had Kinkeldr, and again, like I already mentioned, Bisharp, but even still, that wasn't enough for Darm, and Darm just kind of really took over. So that's why that mon got banned first, I think, before Dracovish. Dracovish came after, and Dracovish, if you guys know my song, no, I'm kidding. But Dracovish, this thing was very busted too. Strongjaw with this, Fish's Rend, which essentially gave it almost equivalent to Explosion on a switch-in. This thing would just spam Explosion, basically, in a sense. There were some teams that people just ran Choice Band and just one move. This is all you really needed on this mod, which was stupid as hell back then. But yeah, in Rain, this mon just blew up a lot of resistances. Ferrothorn coming on a switch-in would get two-shotted. It would take almost 80 max, and then take 80 mid, I think, on a switch-in. Toxapex died. This mon was ridiculous. This was a ridiculous mon. Which is why back then you saw a lot of Seismitoad and just a lot of water immunities, because this thing essentially had no check to it unless you had a water type, which is why Toad was top tier at the time. Toad was every run ladder just because of Dracovish. But yeah, this thing was just dominating. So you had to have a water immunity if you wanted to make a real team. So that's why Toad was there. Even Vaporeon had some niche as well. Had a niche as well at some point. But water immunities were the way to really get around this thing. And if you didn't have one, then you were fucked. Simple as that. You were fucked. Unless you had something faster than it too. But a lot of teams had coverage for it anyway. So yeah, again, Dracovish was common on a lot of Rain teams. It was also common on, again, teams like the one I have right here. This is essentially a team. If you think about it, this is actually a team. So you could run something like this as well, back then, and it would work. But yeah, this was a very dominating mon. And again, not a lot of real ways to cover for it. Because this mon is deceptively bulky. Look at the stats. 90 in HP, 90 attack, 100 defense, 80 speed def, 75 speed. This mon is you would not expect it to take hits so well, but it took hits fairly well, deceptively well. So it was a very dangerous mon. Very, very dangerous mon. So again, like I said, not many defensive checks to it at the time when this mon was released, or at the time when this mon was still fairly new. And yeah, this mon, I think this mon ended up getting banned somewhere around the beginning of home. I think it was the beginning of the home meta, or it was in the mid section of the home meta. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was early 2020 that this mon got banned before Darm, which is crazy to think that Darm got banned first before Dracovish, but it does make sense thinking back on it now, because Darm really had no check. Yeah, Darm really had no check. Dracovish had one check, but Darm had none. So essentially, Dracovish had to go. But I don't know. I still kind of think Dracovish, but Dracovish was really hidden. Dracovish was really hidden though. No one really thought this mon would be that dominating until Darm got banned. So essentially, Darm having to go first makes sense. But yeah, we did see Choice Scarf on some sets as well. So Choice Scarf, Choice Band. Some people even ran Water Absorb to cover for opposing Dracovish as well. A Whirlpool set, because I think that was actually used in a tournament at one point in the early part of this metagame. So there was that, and yeah, I think even people even use Quick Claw on this too. as well, just to like, you know, cheese through some stuff. But yeah, you would see that a lot, or you would see like a lot of different sets on this thing. But yeah, it was a very interesting mon for its time. Then we have Rotom. So Rotom, again, I was gassing this mon up earlier, but I'm gonna gas it up again. This thing was amazing. This thing was amazing in OU. Like, this was the set everybody ran. Everybody and their mother ran this set. This is all you needed, really. I don't think actually, no, it didn't have Pain Split at the time. It had Wisp. It had Wisp at the time. But yeah, you could run this defensive Rotom set, or you could even run like a Choice Scarf set. Or nah, I mean you could have ran a Choice Scarf set, but the thing is that this mon, like I said, was very, very important in checking Darm. So Galar Darm at the time. So a lot of players opted to go more on the bulky side. I don't remember the spread. Let me see if Smogon has the spread. But it was like almost max HP and a little bit in defense and a little bit in speed. What was something like this? Actually, this is the but this is like out of armor stuff. But essentially, it was the same spread. But yeah, essentially the same spread here. But yeah, you could run something like this. Again, Nasty Plot, Overheat, Volt Switch, Wisp, or whatnot. But yeah, this was the spread that people used to run a lot, or this was the set people used to run a lot, just with a lot of HP investment. But yeah, this thing pretty much soloed everything in OU. Because again, like I said, there weren't that many checks to this mon to begin with. But yeah, +2 Overheat just like nuked a lot of things. Even like some resist, like T-Tar and even like Rhyperior at the time, they didn't really appreciate getting overheated, especially Rhyperior. Rhyperior did not like getting overheated, especially if you burn it too. If you burn it, then Rotom just keeps setting up on it and just breaks it down. But yeah, it cooked up Corviknight, it cooked up Toad. Like +2 Overheat against Toad would do like 60 to 70. Clef, if it's unaware, like you're still doing like you're still doing like the damage. You're still doing like consistent damage, since unaware only factors in the +2 boost. But if it's Magikarp, then Rotom can definitely just keep smashing it and just keep overheating it. So there was that. But yeah, like I said, this was the wall breaker, and it was so fun to use. But yeah, this one was better than the other variants of Rotom. Like, it just had so much more going for it than like Rotom Frost, Rotom I forgot what the flying one was called. Rotom Fan, Rotom Wash, even Rotom Mo. Like this was him. This was him. He was that dude. Rotom Heat was that guy. But yeah, this was a very fun mon. I loved using it a lot back in the early days of Sword and Shield. It was very fun. Then we have Corviknight. So Corviknight, I didn't really use Corviknight that much, thinking back on it. Like, I was more of a Mandibuzz guy than a Corviknight guy. Corviknight just seemed too boring to me. Like, they just seemed boring to me. Like, it was cool because it had the pivoting stuff going on. But Corviknight had a lot of utility options, and it was one of the few defoggers that we had in the Sword and Shield metagame when it first started. So you had, like the defensive sets with Brave Bird, U-Turn, Roost, Defog, or you had like Brave Bird Body Press, Roost, Defog, or Brave Bird like Iron Head, U-Turn, Roost, or something like that. So it had a lot of different sets you could do. Again, it was a very experimental mon. Like, you could do a lot with it. Sub Bulk Up was one set as well that came to mind, but that didn't come until like that didn't really start having an appearance until, I want to say, the home metagame. Because again, like during the post Dynamax meta, Corviknight was just essentially a defogger and just a pivot, really. That's all it really did. It didn't really like strive to be more offensive until home. But yeah, you would see like Bulk Up Brave Bird, you would see Body Press, you would see some Body Press sets, and you would even see like some Power Trip sets as well at one point. But I think that became more common towards, or that started to get more attention like somewhere around home, I think. But yeah, again, you had that. So Corviknight was around for that too, or for that part of the meta. Then you had Toad. So Seismitoad did a lot of things. I don't remember if it had knockoff in the early part of the meta. I don't believe it did, but I do recall that this mon basically had or basically ran, you know, like Scald, Earthquake, or Earth Power. I think it had Toxic then. I think it was one of the few mons that still kept Toxic, but I might be wrong about that. But it did have Stealth Rock still, which was important because the amount of Stealth Rock mons that were around at the time, not that it really mattered because a lot of mons were running boots anyway. Not as much, like, actually thinking back on it, it wasn't really that many mons running boots in the early parts of the post Dynamax meta. Like, it was mostly Rotom, and like I think it really was just Rotom. I think it was mainly Rotom. Rotom was the one that was running like boots a lot back then, or it was the more common one anyway. But yeah, so Toad essentially had. Let me just see what this thing had real quick, because I don't remember if it had Toxic. Because again, I'm thinking like pre-home meta, pre-home post Dex meta, or post Dynamax meta. I don't believe it had Toxic then. If it wants to even load for me. Well, anyways, this mon was a defensive check to a lot of different things. Again, it technically covered for Rotom, but not really. It covered for the rock types, again, Tar and even another like defensive mons as well. So it was good at that. You could run Helmet on it too. Again, like I said, it was a very, very solid Dracovish check at the time. So again, covering for its weakness. And also, it did cover for its other coverage options as well, like an Outrage or Psychic Fangs or even Crunch. So you had that to look out for, or Toad was looking out for those things. And honestly, those moves did a lot less than Fish's Rend, because, you know, it's not coming off that switch-in. Off the switch-in turn. But, I don't know why it's lagging. It's lagging, like, very heavily. I love when my thing lags for no reason. I'm just trying to find something just to prove a point. But anyways, yeah, so the mon was just a very defensive check to again, like, electrics and to the opposing waters. So, okay, yeah, it's not even loading. Yay, okay. Alright, so whatever. Oh, now it wants to load. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, Toad. Okay, this just has the offensive. Where's the old set he used to run? Whatever. Anyways, I don't know why it doesn't show the old set. But yeah, Toad had a lot of other coverage options. It had Power Whip to cover for opposing Toad. So that was a really cool option that this mon had. So yeah, Power Whip to hit opposing Toad and also cover for other waters. So yeah, you could run like a 3-attack set with it. You can run again the defensive set, and pretty much just go from there really. So that was Toad. Then we have the best mon ever made. Clefable. Clefable did a lot of things. Or actually did one thing, really. And it did it very well. It had Wish plus Teleport. So Wish Port was very annoying. But it was Clefable's main way of, you know, checking things. Or really like passing recovery. So you can essentially just teleport out and get your wish off and pass into something else. You could even like pass into a like you could port on like a, let's say you port on something like, let's say for example Mandibuzz. You port on Mandibuzz, and then you could actually, you know, pass your wish off as well into the other switch-in, or you essentially get yourself a free switch-in into your fighter. So that was very, very common in the early parts of the meta, which is why you saw Clef paired with stuff like Enkelder and like other like wall breakers as well. So it was very good at that. Now Unaware did not run teleport because it didn't have access to that. But I believe that after the home meta, or actually I think it was either after home or the teleport, or not teleport, or the Olive Armor meta, that's when Clef started to run like soft build and stuff like that. After they updated everything and gave the moves back to old mons, which is why, you know, stuff like Toad got knockoff back and Clef got knockoff as well. But yeah, okay, I don't know why it's lagging so much. But yeah, so Clef could again run Wish Port. You saw like some Calm Mind sets, saw some defensive Calm Mind sets. You know, just the basic stuff that Clefable did. But yeah, Unaware was pretty good too, because again, it did cover for opposing sweepers. But Magic Guard was also pretty good as well to avoid having to seek Hazard Chip. And also, having to avoid to put boots on this thing, because I don't remember Clef really running boots at the time. So I think Magic Guard was one of the better ones. But yeah, Nicholas was also around here as well in this time. It was a very good defensive check to most things, and again, Calm Mind Setter as well. You can run like Acid Armor stuff with it too, and it worked fairly well with Clef too. But yeah, so that covers part 1. Then we got part 2. Once it wants to load, there we go. So part 2. Again, it's still the same meta anyway. I'm just adding like more to it. So we have Kinkeldor, Aegislash, Ferrothorn, Toxapex, Mandibuzz, and Hippowdon. So Kinkeldor was that guy. Let me tell you, man. Let me tell you about Kinkeldor, bro. Kinkeldor was awesome. This was a cool ass mon. This mon getting close combat and defog was the coolest thing ever. Like, this mon was so sick, man. And the part that sucked about it, though, was that it didn't... Or actually, the part that made it better was that it actually got better when the home meta came out, because it got knockoff back. Without knockoff, pretty much, like, it was running close combat facade. Like, I think EQ and Mach Punch. Because I don't believe it got the elemental punches. I might be wrong, though. But yeah, like, you could run essentially this, or Drain Punch to get recovery back. But yeah, it had a lot of different options. You would run Mach Punch as well. To again like cover for Bisharp, and also just hit Darm as well. That was the main one, hitting Darm, because Darm had to go down. So yeah, Mach Punch was very essential for this thing. But yeah, CC off this mon was so fun. Like, honestly, of all the fighters, of all the mons that got close combat in this generation, I think Kinkeldor deserved it the most. Like, this thing was so good. It was so fun. I loved 2-Akil and Clef with Facade. It was like, it was the best feeling. It was the best feeling ever when Kinkeldor 2-Akil Clef with Facade. CC covered everything for the most part, and when it came to Pex, you could Facade it or Quake it too. But yeah, you had Drain Punch. Some sets did run Drain Punch, but they weren't super common. But CC was definitely like one of the better ways to wall break through stuff. Let me see if the set's still here. Yeah, okay, so it would run something like this. But again, this wasn't until Knockoff came back. So when Knockoff came back, it would run this set. Or when Knockoff came back, it ran this set. But yeah, you could essentially run the same set right here. Or that was the set that pretty much this mon ran. Jeez, the lag. The lag is insane. Probably because I'm talking so much. I don't know. But yeah, again, this was one of the sets that Kinkeldor really like really got a lot of attention from, and again, it was one of the best wall breakers in post Dynamax OU, and even during home as well. It was still really good too, because it covered for another mon in home, which I will be talking about soon. Once we get to the home meta, but yeah, it was very good. It was a very good wall breaker. Love this thing, fantastic. Let's see what else. Again, I'm trying to get back to this thing because it wants to keep lagging and shit. Okay, there we go. We have Aegislash. So Aegislash was another contender for post Dynamax meta, and even during home meta as well. So this thing got nerfed. That was one of the things that came with this generation. Aegislash getting nerfed to from 150 special attack or from 150 to a 140. So this thing getting nerfed pretty much kept it down in OU. You couldn't really run Toxic because Toxic wasn't available at the time, so pretty much all Aegislash did before home came out was run Specs or run like a mixed set. So close combat was one of the new things this mon got, and it definitely made it a lot better, or it made it like giving it like better fighting coverage was pretty nice. But yeah, like you could run Specs with this thing. You could run like, well, even Specs CC was a thing at the time because you could actually hit T-Tar with this, or with that coverage. You even had, again, the mix set with Life Orb, because you want to have Sneak to, again, like cover for opposing Aegislash, cover for Dragapult as well, cover for like Gengar and stuff like that too. But yeah, what was cool about this set too is that you could also cover for Bisharp too with running CC. But that one's like really iffy because of Sucker Punch games, and also Bisharp didn't have knockoff at the time during the post Dynamax meta, so pretty much like when it came to that, it would have to run like SD, Throat Chop, Sucker, and not Iron Head and whatnot. They had to deal with Sucker Punch games with that thing too. But yeah, you could run like I think it even ran like a like an SD. No, I don't think it ran it. I think it might have ran an SD set, but I don't think it was very good. It probably wasn't that good because again, Shadow Claw wasn't really that great of coverage, really. But Ghost Fight coverage is still not bad. But the thing is that you really got to break through like Mandibuzz and whatnot, and you still have to play around like the coverage. You still have to play around like Foul Play and Sucker Punch stuff. So it wasn't really that easy, I'd say. But Mandibuzz was one of the best counters to Aegis Slash as well. Being both mix and being like and being just specs in general. Mandibuzz was one of the best checks to ghost types. It was very, very good at the time. I think all the way up till home, it was good. Maybe no, actually no. Even during Isle of Armor, it was good too. But it wasn't seen as much. But it was definitely. But again, up until Isle of Armor, it was pretty good at what it did in covering for the ghost types. But yeah. So again, Aegis Slash would run like CC, Shadow Ball, Sneak, and like Flash Cannon on a spec set. So you would see this a couple times. And again, the mix set as well, which would be Life Orb 2. So essentially, you could run something like this as well. I remember Sub being a set at 1.2. I think like a Sub Shadow Ball set, but I might be wrong about that. But again, Specs and Mix were one of the better sets that this one had. And it was very fun. It was very, very fun to use. We got Ferrothorn. So Ferrothorn getting access to Body Press was something that it didn't actually utilize, I want to say, until honestly, I want to say, because Body Press wasn't that common in the beginning of Sword and Shield, if I recall. It was good. But I don't think a lot of people really paid attention to it at the time. But yeah, like, I remember seeing a lot of Leech Seed sets, like Leech Seed, Gyro, Whip. So pretty much like going back to the old set it used to run from Sun and Moon. It would run like sets like that. But Body Press, I don't think really took off until, I want to say it was until Home, like when Melm was around. I think when Melm was around, that was when Ferrothorn started to become more defensive and became more like an Iron Defense Body Press set that we see today. So I don't remember it really running spikes back then either during post Dynamax. I do remember rocks being more common on it though. But yeah, like essentially Leech Seed Protect stuff was kind of what it did for the beginning part. And I think it was still one of the few mods that didn't have knockoff, or one of the mods that didn't have knockoff yet. So it pretty much, ran Body Press, or I mean like pretty much, like Body Press Gyro, or like Body Press Leech Seed Tech and whatnot. But yeah, like I said, Iron Defense didn't really become a thing until later on. So yeah. Then we have Pex. So Pex was pretty much the ultimate check to a lot of stuff. It checked King Keldor if they weren't running like coverage for it. It checked what other mods did it check? There were some other mods it checked, I forgot. It was technically a Darm check, but not really, because Darm ran Earthquake. So Darm still kind of beat it anyway. And I already mentioned about Pex, but you could run like Helmet with this thing. So it used to run some stuff like that to cover for Dracovish. I think it was the same thing with Ferrothorn as well. I think Ferrothorn also ran Rocky Helmet at the time too, covering for Dracovish when it was still around. But yeah, so essentially Pex did the same stuff it always did: Skull, Toxic, Haze, and Recover. And again, it didn't get knockoff until Home. So once it got knockoff, then it started running that over like Toxic or even over Haze. I think it might have been over. Actually, I don't think it might have been. It could have been over Skull too, but I think Skull was too important, especially for Melmetal at the time. Yeah, Knock was really good though, because it removed the boots from things too. So that started to become more common. And yeah, then we got Mandibuzz. So Mandibuzz was one of my favorite mons to use back in the again, talking pre-home or post Dynamax. Foul Play was really nice on this thing. U-turn was nice as well. You got a lot of pivoting going with this thing. It was just essentially one of the glue mons for OU at the time. So it was also one of the few mons that got knockoff naturally. So I believe it had it naturally. I could be wrong about that. Let me actually check the check the good old Smogon analysis. But I'm pretty sure it had knockoff still. Oh, this is talking about it still. Jeez. So this one still has stuff going, or still has stuff going on, which is funny. But yeah, that's just letting you know this one really had it going. But yeah, like you can run foul play plus knockoff. You had Roost as well. You had Defog to remove the screens or remove hazards for the team and whatnot. So it was essentially the team player for the team. And again, with ghost types being so common, again, Dragapult, Aegislash, Gengar, mostly the first two, Mandibuzz was very important for a lot of teams. So you would see this a lot. It was a very common mon. It was super common during post Dynamax Home and again Isle of Armor. So yeah, and also with it running or with it dealing with sand, because Hippo was around for a decent chunk as well. Overcoat was kind of the ability that this mon ran a lot. But yeah, you had that going on too. And yeah, that pretty much covered Mandibuzz. Again, very solid mon. Was one of the best checks was one of the best defensive ghost type checks in the game. Then we had Hippo. So Hippo was good because it stopped volt switching a lot. Pretty much stopped momentum or could stop a lot of momentum. You had phasing with it, so you could phase things around. You had Rocks down too. Slack Off was good for it as well. Toxic was good because it covered for Rotom switch-ins and also covered for other checks as well. Toxic was very essential for hitting stuff like Mandibuzz. So that way, your ghost type could start whittling it down a lot faster. And what else? There's some other things it had too. But I don't think Hippo got Toxic until home. So essentially, I don't remember what Hippo did during home. I don't remember exactly what it did during home, but again, I do remember it being around. But let's see, defensive. It doesn't really say too much about that, but yeah, Hippo could run like some mixed sets with it too. So you can run more of a Spadef one or more of a defensive one if you like EV'd it properly. But yeah, you could essentially make it like bulky on the special side, so we could take on Rotoms potentially still, and also still be able to be a solid check for the ghost types as well, or solid enough check for the ghost types, or switching for the ghost types. But yeah, the thing about Hippo that didn't make it like I said, it was good. I'd probably say it was a better sand setter than Tar, which is kind of weird to say because Tar is a dark resist, or is a dark type, being able to take on the ghost types. But the thing about the ghost types is that, well, one, the pursuit nerf or pursuit being removed, and two, a lot of the ghost types had something to cover for Tar anyway. Focus blast from Gar, CC from Aegislash, and also Dragapult just pivoted on it, so it just always U-turn on and taking chip or getting chip on it. So T-Tar was not a great check to it at all. Like it's crazy to say that ghost types just aren't checks to T-Tar anymore. Is because they essentially get away scot-free. So yeah, that was not. So yeah, T-Tar was not a good ghost type check, which is sad to say, but it just wasn't. Unfortunately. But yeah, Hippo pretty much ran like Slack Off, EQ stuff. Had Hazard still, but yeah, I don't remember if it had Toxic before home. I don't remember if it did, but I do know that it did have it once home came back. So again, it was essentially just a mon that would sit on things and just wall things. So again, it was very good at that. But the thing about this mon too is that it was kind of prone to being set up fodder as well. So being able to sit up on this thing with your let's see, your Coma-O, for example, or even I'd even argue like Clef. I'd argue Clef to some extent. Corviknight was very free. Corviknight was super free with this thing. You would just sit up on this thing and it wouldn't even care. Like Hippo could not do anything to Corviknight, so it was very free. It was very free setup when it came to like a bulk upset. But yeah, this one again, it wasn't bad. It was actually pretty good for it to set up sand for drill, but that's pretty much all it did. Just being a sand support mon. But yeah, so that covers the post Dynamax meta. Now we have the home meta. So the home meta, again, I pretty much already covered a decent chunk of it already, just from talking about the post Dynamax meta. But the home meta pretty much shook things up pretty dramatically with Kirim being added and Zera Aura being added. Kirim being added was a pretty big deal, because at the time when Kirim was, very common, this mon had no switch-ins for Ice Beam. Ice Beam was super duper free, and Freeze Dry as well. And let me not even get started when this mon still had Kirim Black was around too. But I don't think it definitely got, I'm pretty sure it got usage. But I don't remember. No, Kirim Black got banned during the Crown Tundra metagame. I remember now. But I don't really remember if Kirim got usage during the home metagame. I don't remember if it did. Kirim Black anyway. I don't think it did. Because again, I remember that mon getting banned during Crown Tundra, but I don't remember if it got any usage in home. Anyways, Kirim. So regular Kirim in OU, this thing was nasty as fuck in the early parts of it, or in the beginning. Like from the beginning, like this mon was just dominating everything. Again, Ice Beam was free. Specs Ice Beam off this thing was just super free on everything. No real resist to it. And also it had Freeze Dry too, so it would cover for its water switching. So it covered for Pex, and that was it. Like that's really what this mon did. It was just running free. It was just home free, literally. So you could run specs. There were some subsets as well, like sub Bruce sets. There were some sub DD sets. They were around too, but sub DD didn't really start popping up until the Isle of Armor meta came out. But yeah. So this thing was very powerful, just wall breaker in general. You could pair this with Wish Clef or Wishport Clef and get your switch in with it, and you would essentially come in for free. And yeah, there were some boot sets on this as well. I'm pretty sure the subset ran boots, but I think you could even run like 4 attack Kirim with boots as well. But Specs was the way to go with this thing. It just covered everything very nicely. Yeah, Ice Beam, Draco, Freeze Dry, Earth Power was pretty much the way this one went. It started running Focus Blast once Blissey came back in the Isle of Armor, but before that, it just ran Ice Beam, Draco, Freeze Dry, and Earth Power. So yeah, like I said, everything just did not appreciate a hit from it. Like, what's it called? I think the best defensive check at the time against it, before it got banned, I don't want to say it was Melm, because Melm still took a lot, even from Specs at the time. But pretty much like when it came to Kirim, you had to revenge kill it, because there really weren't that many mons that could take it on, like just from full. There were very few mons that could take this on from full. So yeah, you had to revenge kill it with something else. So Dragapult was a good revenge killer for it. What else? You did have stuff like Cinderace as well at the time. Kinkeldor was still pretty good, but you had to get chip on it first to make sure you can kill it with Mach Punch. Rotom was decent, but you had to play around Draco. But besides that, it was decent enough, I'd say. But yeah, so there was that. You had what else was around that covered for it? Again, I kind of wish that the meta was kind of separated so I could actually like pull up all the other checks. But yeah, basically this mon didn't have a lot of checks. You got to revenge kill it with something else. So again, a faster mon could deal with it. It could just reliably take it on. And there was that. I remember there was one time I tried using Snorlax against this thing, and it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either, because Snorlax didn't really cover for a lot of other things in the meta. But it was a decent enough check to cure him with Thick Fat. But again, it wasn't like a groundbreaking kind of mon. Let's just say that it just came in to take a hit and then just switch out afterwards. Then we got Melm. So Melm, when Melm dropped in the home metagame, that mon was going crazy. There was no checks to it. Just like Kirim, there were no checks to Melm. Like Choice Band was going crazy. AV was going crazy, man. This mon was just going bonkers. Like it literally had like no switching. Had no switching for anything. You could argue Corviknight, but Corviknight would get Thunder Punched. You could argue Komao, Actually, Coma was a decent enough one, but not really. Ferrothorn, you could kind of argue that one as well. But essentially, still, you would be doing a lot of damage to this thing. Pex was also another like check to it as well. But again, like Melm could get around that still. With again running an AV set with Thunder Punch to catch it and whatnot. But yeah, this Mon was very hard to take down at the time. The power creep in post home or in home, it was pretty massive. Like Melm and Kyurem dropping, and also Zero Aura, but mostly Melm and Kyurem dropping into OU at the time, like early 2020. There were not that many checks to it. There just weren't. There really weren't many checks to these guys at the time that they dropped. Like, I remember at one point people wanted to see Kyurem get banned during the home meta game. Like, it was that disgusting to deal with. Again, Specs, Sub, like they were all just problems. But Melm ended up getting the ban hammer first, so that one got banned. Like, I think it was like a week. I think Melm only lasted like a week in OU. It was like a week or two in OU that this Mon lasted, and then it got banned right away. So Melm ended up getting the ban hammer, and yeah, that Mon disappeared. That Mon disappeared off the face of the planet. So yeah, it was pretty good. It was actually, I don't know if it was good in Ubers. I know I used it in Ubers, but I don't remember it actually having much of a niche at that time. Mostly because, like, well, again, I'm going a little off topic about OU to Ubers now, but I'll come back to it at some point. But basically, yeah, Melm had to go. Mons was too busted. Mons was way too busted at the time, so it just covered everything, or just hit everything really hard. And again, not many switch-ins for it. Now, Zero Aura was that guy. Let me tell you about Zero Aura real quick. This guy outsped Dragapult. That's the only thing you need to know. This Mon outsped Dragapult. This was the revenge killer. This was the revenge killer for Dragapult. If Zero Aura did not exist in this metagame, if they didn't release Zero Aura in this metagame, I honestly would argue that Pult would have been banned. Like, I'm gonna say it. I think Pult would have been banned if Zero Aura never dropped. Like, the Mon Pult is just too damn crazy with what it can do. And again, at the time, it was the fastest Mon in the tier. But then Zero Aura dropped. So when Zero Aura dropped, it essentially checked it. Since, Zero Aura also had all of its home moves back. So that knockoff back. So you can knock off Zero Aura. Or, you can knock off Dragapult. It also had Play Rough as well. CC. So it just got a whole lot of different coverage options that gave Zero Aura like a lot more moves, or a lot more things it could do. Also with boots down, Zero Aura didn't have to worry about hazards, so you could just freely pivot with this thing, knock off things. Pretty much Zero Aura, like I want to say, was the Mon that kind of started the momentum. Like, it was the Mon that pretty much essentially beat ground types because of knockoff. Like seriously, with hazards down, especially rocks, you can essentially just beat ground types with this thing. That's how stupid this was. And that's how stupid knockoff was in general for this generation. Like, knockoff was the most spammed move in this generation. Like, honestly, it was. So you can knock off ground types and you essentially beat them with chip. Like Toxic Chip, or even just Rock Chip. But yeah, so Zero Aura was a very good pivot, one of the best pivots in the game, and it pretty much stayed that way throughout the whole generation. Like, the moment it dropped into home, it never dropped, I think, unless I'm wrong and it dropped somewhere during home or during Crown Tundra. I think it did drop during Crown Tundra, but essentially the Mon came back anyway. But yeah, this Mon this Mon was very consistent throughout the generation. Again, bulk up sets were pretty good. You could run Life Orb on this thing as well. I remember Choice Band being a thing at one point, but yeah, like just mixed sets with this was really good. So again, the mix set with Volt Switch was nice, and the utility set with Volt Switch was nice, and again, like bulk up were pretty good as well. Then we have Como-O. Now this one, honestly, this one should have been below. Like, it should have been in the home, or I mean, it should have been part of the post Dynamax stuff, because it was pretty much there anyway. But I want to mention home specifically because this is where Como really started to get a lot more momentum. Because the body press set, I want to say, is really where it started over here. It started in this metagame, because it also got Toxic back too. So with it having Toxic back, it actually covered for a lot more things as well. So you had that going for, so it had that going for it. Yeah, you could run again the bulk up set, or the nasty plot set, not nasty plot. The iron defense set pretty much was the way this one was really going. So again, pretty much like the body press set was the way for it to go. It covered for everything fairly well. Again, Toxic to cover for the ghost types, and body press as well. Sometimes Como would run Earthquake to cover for Aegislash, and also, you know, he had Bulletproof, which was way better anyway, because it was a good way to cover for Dragapult, and also cover for Aegislash's Shadow Balls. So it was good at that. But yeah, so you could run like, you know, Rocks Press, Toxic, Quake, or again, make it an iron defense set. You could put like Flamethrower on it too to cover for Aegislash, or again get Chip on Dragapult as well. But yeah, that's what this mon did, and it was pretty good at it. You could run the helmet set with it as well to cover for things. But yeah, this mon basically covered for a lot of the physical attackers in the meta. It could even cover for Zero Aura too. Like, it was actually a pretty good Zero Aura check until players started to run Play Rough on it. But even still, like, Como would still cover for the Zero Aura fairly well. I wanna almost say that it covered for Melmetal, but that one's really off. That one's very off. It was a good dark type check too, so it covered for Bisharp too. And what else? It also covered for Corviknight to some extent as well. And yeah, it was a good. Well, actually, no, I'm not gonna say Weavile. Weavile came a little later. I'll just say that Weavile didn't really get much attention until Crown Tundra. And again, I will get to that as soon as I can. But yeah, that essentially covers for home. I know I'm missing something. I know I am, but just hang on. Cause I mean, for one, I'm still trying to remember like what else was around at that time. Oh, Incineroar was around, but it wasn't that great it wasn't really that amazing looking back at it. Like, it was okay, but it didn't really have a niche, I want to say. Let me just go to it real quick, because I'm trying to remember what exactly this thing did. I mean, Intimidate wasn't bad. It was one of the few mons that had Intimidate at the time, because again, there was like Gyarados and whatnot, but it didn't really have a whole lot. Yeah, this is pretty much RU stuff, but essentially it's like the same stuff that it ran in OU. But yeah, so that's Incin. Like I said, it didn't really have a great niche. I mean, it was okay. Like, it was a fire type. That's one thing to add. It was a fire and dark type, so it covered for like Shadow Ball and whatnot from things. But that's pretty much essentially it. And Como set up on that too, so there's that. But yeah, let's see what else. All right, so next we have the Isle of Armor metagame. Now, I'm just going to say this about Isle of Armor. This metagame was boring as hell. Like, let me tell you why. It's because we got the fat pink bitches. You got the Slowbro family, and you got Blissey back. And guess what all three of them have that made them really, really annoying? You guessed it. Teleport. Oh god, yeah. Teleport and Boots was not a good combo. It was not a good combo, man. That combo was annoying as hell, especially for this metagame, because this metagame it took so long to get through. It was torture playing this metagame, man. Like, I honestly, Isle of Armor was probably my least favorite meta to play. Like, pretty much that was why. Well, honestly, around like the midpoint of Home and during Isle of Armor, that was why I switched over to playing old gens, because I was just that bored of playing Isle of Armor and again Home. Like, I could not do it. Oh, there's another one I forgot to mention for home. Vileplume. Vileplume is actually pretty decent, but it covered it because I mean it was actually a pretty good zero aura check, but that's more like a niche thing it had. Anyways, going back to Isle of Armor because I didn't mean to do that, but yeah. Like I said, Isle of Armor was boring. It's a very, very boring metagame because like everything was just very bulky and just wouldn't die. And that's mostly coming from Blissey and Clef, like passing wishes a lot. But also there was just the influx of boots as well. Boots just made games last way longer than they needed to. Which is why I'm a little hesitant about like Scarlet and Violet, because it's already been confirmed that boots are coming back in those games. Like it's already confirmed that boots are back for Scarlet and Violet. So I'm a little hesitant still about where that meta is going to be going, but since there's so many like ways of hazards in Scarlet and Violet now, I'm not as concerned about it. And plus there's also like the fact that, you know, recovery moves got nerfed heavily. So I'm not too upset by it. Or I'm not too like, you know, off put by it, but yeah, going back to this meta though, Volcarona was a very good wall breaker, or was a very good sweeper for this meta, because it essentially covered for the bros, and that was it really. Like not really covered for the bros, but you get what I'm saying. This thing ran a very common set. Actually, there were like 3 sets Volcarona ran when it first dropped. It was the offensive QD set, and it was also Safeguard, and it was also the bulky Roost QD set. But yeah, like the off Volk could run like QD, Fire, Grass, and Bug coverage, or it could run Psyche to cover for Toxapex. And I think Psyche was the one that was more common because again, the bros, covering for Pex mattered a lot more in this metagame, just because like it would just stay around for way too long. but yeah, QD Volk was good at the time. What else? Volk was just good in general at the time. Blissey, like I said, Blissey was very annoying. It did a lot of different things. I think it was a rock setter, but it was mainly just a wish passer. So all it did was just pass wishes and be annoying. You can run Toxic on it to cover for a lot of other things. You can run Softball plus wish. But again, like you needed port on this thing. So honestly, it just came down to like, you know, port plus wish. But again, I do remember Softball and wish being on a set at one point. But yeah, you could also run Toss to cover for switch-ins as well. You could run like Aromatherapy to add more utility options for the team, and also remove status from the team as well. But yeah, it pretty much did one thing, and it was very good at it. It was wish plus teleport. So being able to pass wishes off this thing was very common for it, and yeah. Yeah, okay, so my bad. Which wasn't incompatible with it, but I mean to say that that due to the fact that it had boots, this mon could just come in and not have to worry about taking hazard chip. But yeah, with it being able to pass around, wishes without having to see chip, it made it very annoying. It was very, very annoying at that. But yeah, essentially it just ran like toss, wish, or soft wish, toss, and port. Like soft toss, like T-Wave or Toxic, and then just port out and just, you know, be a nuisance for the team. So that's all it really did, and it was very good at that. It was very solid at that. Then we have Bro. So Bro and Slow Bro and Slow King, they essentially did the same thing, teleport plus future sight. So this was a very very annoying core future sight with port. So what this would do is that you would predict the dark type to come in. You could future sight on said dark type, or you future sight on the switching that it comes in, then you port out. Or vice versa. You port out, and you would bring in the fighter, and the fighter would always force the dark type out, so you would catch whatever comes in on the switch in, and you could just hit them. So this was very common paired with Urshifu and even paired with King Keldor. But more Urshifu than King Keldor. And you'll understand why. You'll understand exactly why. But yeah, like I said, these two ran pretty much the same set. Bro was better at it physically, while Slowking was better at it more on the Spadef side. But essentially they were both very good. You could even pair both of them together too. And it was not a good time. Let's just say that it was not a good time. They were both very annoying. Now, Bro was a little more customizable than Slowking. You could actually put stuff like Ice Beam plus Body Press. You could even put, Future Sight plus Scald. You could even put Taunting on this thing as well. So it was very customizable. You could even put Cobra Berry to cover for the Dark type. So again, covering for Weavile, Bisharp, all those things at the time. But yeah. It didn't really run any other sets like that. Like, I don't remember seeing like Calm Mind Bro or Calm Mind Slowking really. It was just pretty much support Sight. So that's all they really did. And that pretty much covers both of them for real. We got Urshifu. So Dark Urshifu was a problem. That boy was a problem from the get-go. I almost want to argue that Urshifu is the reason why these teams got very, very defensive in the Olive Armor metagame, because there really just were not that many defensive checks to Urshifu. Again, you had Clef, but here's the thing. Choice Banded Urshifu does like 40% to that boy. So Clef is getting hurt. Clef is getting hurted by that. And you can even pair that with Jab as well. So you had the Jab to catch it on the switch or whatnot. But yeah. So essentially, our Choice Band Urshifu just ran like Wicked Blow, CC, Jab, and like Sucker or whatever. Or it could run a U-turn too. And U-turn was pretty common on this thing as well. So it's very annoying. It's very, very annoying. But Wicked Blow was the move that kind of pushed this mon over the edge. A lot of players, opt to go like Choice Band. I think some went Choice Scarf in the beginning of it. You had like the bulk upset at one point as well. I think you had the bulk upset at one point as well. But Choice Band was the one that really like took this mon over the edge. So yeah, again, like I said, there really weren't that many defensive checks to this mon at the time, besides like Clef. But that's why teams had to kind of double up with it. So you also saw stuff like Tangrowth at the time too, when Tangrowth dropped, because Tangrowth did drop in this metagame. When Tangrowth dropped in this metagame, pretty much a lot of teams were running, like regen cores. So you saw Tangrowth plus Pex and Clef. You'd see Corviknight occasionally too on those kinds of teams. And again, like defensively, again, Helmet Pex, Helmet Tangrowth, Helmet Clef, those were all things that were, in a sense, ways to cover for Urshifu. And yeah. Revenge killing this mon, it wasn't that difficult, besides, having to deal with Sucker Punch stuff. But faster mons like, faster mons like Dragapult and whatnot can revenge kill it, barring, Sucker Punch games. Clef, again, can still take a hit from it and still be able to kill it back. Granted, again, that one's like still iffy, but it has better odds in doing that as well. What else came around at the time? I forgot what else came around at the time, or that was around at that time. Como was actually a pretty good check to it as well. Como was around for that. So it was decent enough to take it on. So there's that too. And what else? What else was around to cover for the Urshifu mon? Mungus. Mungus had a little bit of a niche, but with covering it with Spore, but also it did like help fairly well on, again, Regen's cores as well. But yeah. So there was that. And again, there were ways to revenge kill it. You had stuff like Hydreigon too, which I forgot to mention. Hydreigon was actually a pretty important mon during home too, because that also gave it because that was also another nasty plot wall breaker, and essentially, and also it was able to outspeed stuff like outspeed Kyurem too. So a mon like that, outspeeding Kyurem, was also very much needed, or very much important too. And and yeah, there were some other mons that did drop in this meta too, like a Azumarill. Azumarill came back too, but I don't think that mon really made much of a splash in the Isle of Armor. So it kind of dropped off fairly. It dropped off fairly fast. But I think this mon would have been a decent enough check to Urshifu. But like, I'm just kind of throwing things out there. I'm just like saying what I remember. But yeah, this one was more popular than the water one. The water one didn't get popular until after this mon got banned, which I mean, this mon got banned during Crown Tundra. So, and I'll talk about that. Then we have Magnezone. So Magnezone was interesting. It's kind of funny actually thinking back on this mon, but this mon, when it first dropped, everyone was so hyped about it. They're just like, yo, Magnezone's back, let's go. And then when it dropped, everyone was just disappointed because they're just like, yo, Magnezone's some shit. like it was like it was funny because it had like a whole like shift. Like people were using, you know, specs a lot. People were using like sub a couple times, but the body press set didn't really start becoming a thing until Crown Tundra. But yeah, like I think, actually no, I might be wrong, because I know that body press, again, like Zone did get body press, or I mean, when Zone got body press, like it was a good thing, but like no one really utilized it until Crown Tundra. So it did drop off a little bit. I remember it dropping off. Like it was kind of high for the beginning of the Isle of Armor metagame, and then it dropped off somewhere around it dropped off somewhere around the end of it. It started, and I believe they went down to Ari at one point. That's kind of how much this mon dropped. But again, people started to discover its niche with Iron Defense Body Press somewhere around Crown Tundra. But yeah. So the thing about it is that when it dropped, it did cover for some things. It was actually a pretty good Corviknight check, because I mean, like it locked them on in, and forced the kill. But then after that, it didn't really do too much else. So kind of really fell off as soon as that niche happened, or as soon as that niche went away. And yeah. So that was essentially Magnet-Pool. Analytic did become a thing at one point, or I mean, it started to become a thing at one point because people started to play around Magnezone's ability with Shed Shell. So people started to go like Shed Shell Corviknight. So then Magnezone started to become, like more offensive with the Analytic set. But again, like I said, that started to fall off, and the mon ended up dropping down to RU. But then it came back during Crown Tundra once people discovered the body press set. So that covers for the Isle of Armor meta. Now we got part 2. So part 2 is still a part of the same meta anyway. We got Librero, Cinderace, and we have Grassy Surge, Rillaboom, and Magearna as well. Magearna was in the Isle of Armor meta. Well, actually, I kind of... See, I'm trying to remember if it dropped during Isle of Armor or if it dropped during Home. Because it's tough because these two dropped right at the end of the Home metagame. Like, which is why I wanted to put them in Isle of Armor, because that's where these two really started to shine. But Magearna technically came around towards that time as well, which is why I kind of put it here anyway. But anyways, let's talk about these two right here. So these were the starters that won. These were the starters that won Gen 8. So Cinderace and Rillaboom. So when Cinderace, in the beginning of the meta, like again, I'm talking way in the beginning, Dynamax meta. I think this one also was also kind of a sweeper too, but it wasn't as pronounced. But it was good though. You had Max Knuckle stuff. You had the Max Airstream with that as well, and you had your Max Flare, which would also boost in the sun as well. And Cinderace's signature move in Pyro Ball being like base, I forgot what the base power is, but it's a strong ass move. Yeah, base 120. This thing being base 120 with no drawback besides miss, was very good. It was very good. Again, this move was essentially like it's Magnus Opus. Cinderace was really like one of the premier wall breakers back in the, or before it got its ability in before it got its ability, because before it had its ability, when it was just Blaze, the Mon kind of just ran boots and had court change. What court change did was that it would bounce back hazards. So, or I mean, it would switch hazards from the user side to the opponent side. So if you had rocks and spikes on your side, court change would switch that right over to the opponent. So it was very good in hazard control in its own way. You had the pivot set with it, so you could just pivot around with it as well. So you had pivoting, had HJK, and you had Sucker Punch as well to cover for Dragapult. Now, when this Mon got Librero, it just pretty much boosted that completely. So you could still run it with you can still run it with boots, but now you have Libero on top of that. So now you could just switch up your typing. So be able to go for like stab Pyro Ball, stab HJK, stab U-turn, stab Sucker Punch, all those things. Yeah, this Mon was not going to be staying for very long. And another thing to add on to that is the fact that Sun was starting to become a thing as well during the Isle of Armor meta. So you started to see a lot of Torkoal and Cinderace stuff. You also started to see Charizard as well too, and Volk along with that as well. So yeah, Sun was at a pretty high point during the Isle of Armor metagame, which I actually enjoyed. Seeing that was pretty fun. Seeing some tour games with Charizard on it was pretty cool too, and seeing Ace as well with it as well, or seeing Ace as well with it added on to it. But yeah, so again, Sun boosted Pyro Balls definitely hurt it. They hurt it a lot. U-turn for the pivoting, HJK, all that stuff. I think there was another move it had too. I think it had you can run Taunt with it as well to get some momentum going in your favor, and also slow down your opponent's momentum too. So you can stop Hazard, you can stop Defog, you can stop all those things. So Cinderace did have a niche in that, but again, mainly this Mon was just going to be a hitter. Like, it was just hitting everything. So yeah, like, it was pretty funny seeing stuff like Clefable die to Pyro Ball. That shit was hilarious. U-turn doing a ton to stuff like U-turn doing a ton to stuff like Slow King and all that, and even Slowbro. It was pretty funny to see. But yeah, this Mon was very dominant when it had Librero. So yeah, a lot of people were waiting for checks that could actually cover for Cinderace, because Cinderace at the time had no checks. Like, the Mon was essentially uncheckable. There was not much you could really do. I mean, there's Rain with Barraskewda, but that's not really as great. And then you also had Urshifu, but Urshifu doesn't really count like that. Because it could Sucker Punch it first and then be able to drop its dark typing. Or you could do some other things as well and just U-turn on it. But, actually, my bad, not U-turn on it, but you could switch out or whatever. But yeah, this Mon was very, very free to just spam whatever it wanted to. And that's what kind of made it broken. Then we have Rillaboom. So Rillaboom got Grassy Surge and Grassy Glide. Now, Grassy Glide was, the grass priority move that worked in terrain. And it would be boosted as well because of its stab and being in terrain. So this Mon, in the early part of the Sword and Shield meta, or in the Isle of Armor part of the meta, this thing was nasty. It was very nasty. Choice Band Woodhammer was free on everything. Choice Band Grassy Glide just cleaned up everything. Even like both versions. Well, I mean, definitely the water version of Urshifu, but the dark one also took a lot from it as well. You can run U-turn for pivoting. You had superpower to cover for the steals. So, and I mean, the steals at the time weren't really that like great. I mean, Ferrothorn, that was it. Ferrothorn, yeah, pretty much just Ferrothorn. Corviknight too. And it did have knockoff too, so you can knock off switch-ins and whatnot. So, again, like, pretty much this was Rillaboom's start, and it just pretty much was just dominating. One of the best checks to it was Rotom at the time, so Rotom covered for it fairly well. It could take on every coverage option, and I believe it was faster than the two just by 1 point because of the 86 speed. So there's that to mention. Let me see if Rotom's actually on here. Rotom is not on here. Wow, that's actually pretty funny. Rotom is down here though. I think it's 86. Yeah, it's just 1 point faster than Rillaboom, so it essentially outspeeds it. But yeah, like I said, the pivoting set, or I mean, pretty much Choice Band did get walled by Rotom fairly well. But outside of that, though, Rillaboom was kind of free to just spam Grassy Glide a lot, and again, just keep pivoting on things. So yeah, not too many checks really. Besides, again, Mandibuzz, Corviknight, Amoonguss actually at the time, and even Tangrowth actually. I think Rillaboom did try to go like mix things up and go acrobatics at one point, but I might be pushing that one a little bit, but definitely the Mon did get checked fairly well by some things. Then we have Magearna. Now Magearna, oh boy, Magearna was a whole other thing. That Mon was dirty. That was a dirty ass Mon. Wanna know why? Because this Mon got Trick. With Magearna getting Trick, what can you do to stop this thing? You could trick it with a Choice Scarf. I mean, you could trick Choice Scarf on whatever you want. So checking the special wall, Magearna wins. Simple as that. You could set up with this thing. You could just keep spamming it. You could do whatever you want. All you need to know is that Magearna wins. Magearna wins. So if you trick a Blissey, you win. Simple as that. So that's kind of really what broke this Mon, Trick. So a lot of players would opt to go like Choice Specs with it, so you could just lock yourself into like Flare Cannon or Volt Switch or Focus Blast, whatever you want to. It still had the Shift Gear set, Shift Gear Calm Mind, so the dual screen set, or the dual setting set. You had Trick Room as well. Granted, Trick Room wasn't as strong because there really weren't that many abusers at the time during this metagame. But yeah, essentially the spec set was kind of what broke this Mon. So again, having that free check or having that free turn to trick on Blissey is really, or just any special wall in general, it was really what broke this Mon. So yeah, busted ass Mon, and it had to go. Because at one point in the community, people were trying to figure out who to ban first. If they wanted to ban Cinderace first, or if they wanted to ban Magearna first. And I believe that the consensus came down to Magearna over Ace. And Ace was going to be suspect tested right around the Crown Tundra metagame. So it was a very weird time for these two. But more for Cinderace than for Magearna, since the Crown Tundra metagame was so close at the time. But Magearna pretty much got banned right around the end of the Olive Armor metagame. But yeah, again, this thing had too many things it could do, and there weren't that many checks for it at the time. And once its checks were already checked by Trick, then Magearna just wins. Then we have Barraskewda. So Barraskewda, this one had its ups and downs, but once it got flip turned, it started just flipping on everybody. So this thing was pretty good. I mean, I already mentioned it earlier when it was in the Dynamax metagame, but after Dynamax coming into here, once it got flip turned, it started to become a little bit more aggressive. But the thing that kind of didn't really, push Barraskewda off the edge yet was the fact that, again, Cinderace was around, so Sucker Punching it and whatnot, and also Sun was very popular too. So Rain didn't really pick up until Crown Tundra. But another thing to really note is that Rain in general this generation, it wasn't really that good. It really wasn't that good. The main culprit for it is Rillaboom. Rillaboom just kind of invalidates Rain. I mean, yeah, you have, again, going to Crown Tundra, you have stuff like Zapdos to cover for it, but at the end of the day, Barraskewda can't really do what it can without having to deal with Rillaboom. So that's why you have stuff like Zapdos, you have stuff like Ferrothorn, and some other like grass checks. Because I mean, every Rain team should have a grass check, just because of Rillaboom. In last gen's OU, in Gen 7, that wasn't really that much of a problem. Mostly because there was no grassy glide at the time. So when it came to stuff like, Bulu and whatnot that could check Rain, it couldn't really outspeed any of those checks. So, or it couldn't really outspeed any of them. So they would just get hit by an Ice Beam or Hurricane, or Bulu would get hit by an Ice Beam or Hurricane from something, and, you essentially just break through your check. But yeah, Bulu not having any priority is kind of what did make it, where it is today. Or, it's kind of what made it what it is today, being a weaker Rillaboom. So So yeah, but yeah, on Rain, like I said, Flip Turn was pretty good. You get a lot of damage on this thing, and you can still get like momentum going in your favor, opening up like another check for you and whatnot. But yeah, this thing was very good on Rain. Very, very good on Rain. Once you get rid of Rillaboom, then Barraskewda just kind of smashes everything else. And yeah, at the time, what was around at the time paired with Barraskewda during the Crown Tundra or during the Isle of Armor? I know Kingdra was around, but it didn't really stay around for that long. Let's see what else. I mean, of course, Pelipper, because you have to have the Rain up. And you need to have something to cover for Rillaboom as well, and also cover for Ferrothorn too. Urshifu did get some play on Rain. I think the water one was mainly used on Rain for the beginning, or when it first dropped. And I think Ozzy did come around as well. But again, like I said, Rain wasn't very good at this time. Because Sun was the thing. Sun was the thing. Everyone was on the Sun. So, Torkoal, Sunsetter, it does a lot of things. Gets rocks up, spins away stuff. You can yawn things to get momentum for the rest of the team. You have fire coverage and whatnot. You can even put rest on this to keep it healthier. Heat Rock to keep the Sun up and whatnot. And that pretty much covered Torkoal, really. So again, just the more dominant Sunsetter compared to Ninetales. And yeah, Charizard. So Charizard, it was funny because this mon actually was used in OU. It was a very solid wall breaker. With Weather Ball under Sun, you could just body every mon. Like Blissey's a good example. That mon, let me show you the calc real quick, because that was such a funny calc at the time. Like, let me see if I have it. Damage calc. This mon got destroyed. Like Blissey got destroyed under the Sun from Solar Boosted Charizard, or Solar Power Boosted Charizard, being Specs. Like Weather Ball did, I believe like 60 to 70% to it. I'm not too sure. Let me check real quick. Charizard. Choice Spec Charizard. Yeah, see, that's the set. So Choice Spec Charizard under Sun versus Blissey. So versus Blissey. That's not Blissey. Versus Blissey under Sun. Yeah. 52 to 61%. That is a lot. That is a ton. I don't know if it actually factored in the Sun. It should have factored in the Sun. Pretty sure it factored in the Sun. But yeah, this thing was very dominant. It was very dominant. Yeah, you basically 2-KO this thing, which is insane. But yeah, this mon had no switch-ins under Sun. So Charizard was that guy. You could run some other coverages options as well, but I remember that there was one time someone actually used like a 3-attack or like a 4-attacking Charizard with just fire moves. Like it was just like Weather Ball, Overheat, Flamethrower, and Fire Blast or something like that. But yeah, I mean there were really no fire checks during this time in the meta. There really weren't that many, or like any at all. So Charizard was free to just spam this move. But yeah, it was very, very good. The only way to really take down Charizard was have something faster. So again, having like, or even having priority, but Sucker Punch from things, especially if it's got chipped already. If it's got chipped already, then you're already putting it in Sucker Punch range. But yeah, like I said, this mon literally had no switch-ins or anything, so you just spam whatever you want, or just spam fire moves on everything, and essentially just break down every core. But yeah, that pretty much covers for the Isle of Armor meta. So yeah, we're almost done. Still more to go. I don't know how long I've been recording. Recording for an hour. Oh my god. Okay. Alright, Crown Tundra. Whew. Alright, Crown Tundra. So, Crown Tundra gave us back the legendaries. So, we got everything back from Zygarde to the legendary birds to the Reggies to all the other Ubermons and whatnot, but who cares about them? So, I'm gonna go down the list. We're gonna talk about the new ones that came. So, again, Spectrier, and then we also have Pheromosa. So, I'm going by the suspect test that happened because I believe that Pheromosa was first. I mean, I would count Genesect, but I'm not counting that mon because that mon got banned like right away. But yeah, so this is kind of how the whole thing went down, and I'll talk about these guys here too. But yeah, Pheromosa was the first one to get banned. I believe it was Pheromosa, and then Zygarde followed afterwards. Oh, and then Kieran Black. I forgot I had Kieran Black. Fuck, I forgot I had Kieran Black. Whatever. I'll put it over Nidoking for now. I'll talk about again. I'm gonna talk about it later, but Kieran Black is a very important one because that thing was, oh my god. Put that over you. But yeah, so I think Kieran actually got banned before Spectre. But yeah, so Pheromosa was the first one to go because it had Bolt Beam coverage. It has Bolt Beam coverage. It has Triple Axle now. So with getting Triple Axle, you can essentially just break things down very easily. But yeah, the one thing that really did push it over the edge was the mix set. So it having Shockwave and Ice Beam together really just made this thing impossible to deal with. Yeah, mix sets went crazy on this thing. Again, QD was really the one that kind of took this mon out for real. The only way to really beat Pheromosa is with priority. So if you have priority, then you're good. If you don't, well, you just die. You just die, I guess. Or you be a ghost type, but even a ghost type doesn't really check it that well. Yeah, this mon essentially getting like +1 speed and everything, or +1 speed and then just sweeping everything down, or sweeping everything afterwards, just kind of what really put this mon over the edge. But yeah, no real checks to it. Again, this is coming off base 137 attack. This bitch hits hard hitting bitch, man. Hard hitting bitch, like that thing really hits hard. So after you boost your attack and whatnot, you can't really stop this mon. But yeah, there were like some pretty good sets on this thing. Again, the mixed set was pretty good. You can run boots on it as well and just make it a spinner. So again, a spinning set with boots was really nice on it as well. And and yeah, essentially you just covered for everything really. Again, Bolt Beam coverage, QD, bug, focus, or again a physical variant with like CC and like there's some other things it had. But definitely CC was good. Jab was okay since it covered for Clef and whatnot. But yeah, essentially like Braper, or essentially like U-turn, CC, Jab, Triple Axle was kind of what Pheromosa could run. It also did get Draw Run too, so you had that to cover for whatever you needed to, like Pex, for example. So hitting Pex with that wasn't too bad. But yeah, you could essentially go Life Orb, Boots, Choice Scarf, Choice Band, and this mon was pretty much set to go, really. Yeah, again, like I said, the only way to really cover for it was with having something that could take the hit, or again having the priority mon. Rillaboom was actually pretty funny because it destroyed this one in one hit. So Choice Band, Rillaboom just bodied this thing right away. What else? Yeah, that pretty much covers it for real. There really weren't that many other mons that I would say could come in on this thing safely. So you had to revenge kill it. So that's why this mon got banned. Not many mons that could switch in on it, and you had to use priority to take it out. So Zygarde, it's the same story that it had back in the Sun and Moon days. Busted ass mon. Had to run sub DD. Sub DD was really what broke this mon again. So sub DD Glare was all it really needed, and that's all you needed to know. It's really all you need to know. It beat everything. Simple as that. It beat everything with this set. You even beat Rillaboom. And yeah, there were priority options, and there were ways you could actually break it sub, like in Kyurem with the triple, not triple. Well, actually, with Triple Axle, you actually could break it sub, but you had to actually land, and you actually have to bring this mon in without hitting. You have to bring the mon in without getting glared, and a whole lot of other things that just were too difficult to do. So yeah, so Zygarde. One of the ways you actually could have taken it down were with Dragapult's Infiltrator, so you could Draco through it sub. But outside that, there really weren't that many options. So this mon just became way too problematic. There were even some sets that ran Toxic because it couldn't really break through Buzzwole. So some ran Toxic to cover for Zygarde as well. Or some ran Toxic to cover for Buzzwole too. But yeah, This mon was stupid. Stupid ass mon. Had to go. Goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye, Zygarde. And now we have the true mon. The true mon. Kyurem finally has access to physical ice coverage, man. It has Icicle Spear. You know what that means, right? Look at that attack stat, bro. 170 with Icicle Spear. Oh. And it hits almost 3 times. Bro. Yeah, that mon had to go. That mon had to go. That mon had to go, man. DD, Spear, Fusion Bolt. Yeah, that mon was not lasting long at all. That mon was not going to last long, man. Like, the fact this mon has actual ice coverage, actual physical ice coverage, made me so happy. This was such a fun mon to use. So essentially with Kyurem Black, you could have made it like, I mean, it was DD. Like, DD was one of the go-to sets it had. In the past, you would run Mix on it, but not anymore. The time is now, old man. It's time to have ice coverage now, physical ice coverage. But yeah, after one DD, this thing just smashed everything. So that's all you need to know. Just broke everything in half. Literally. So when it came to priority, or just faster mons in general, you had like, you know, our Shifu that could Scarf for Shifu. Lele, you had to speed tie with it, and if you won the speed tie, then Kyurem wins. Or I mean, if you lose the speed tie, Kyurem wins. Coco, nope. Nope. The only way you can deal with this is to reverse kill it, or I mean, like, have something faster than it. So again, if you have like Scarf Blast, or even like Scarf Spectrier at the time, or even like Pult, if you can get it before it DDs, or if you can catch it before it DDs, or if you're running like a faster variant of them, again, I think the better one would be like Blast, or maybe even Scarf Cart. Those are the better ways to really cover for it, or again, priority in like Kinkeldor or whatnot. But again, Kinkeldor actually fell off around this time, so that mon was not going to be around. So when it came to that, like, it literally came down to like Cart or Blast I could take it on, or again, or Shifu at the time. So when this mon set up, it was over. Simple as that. This mon deserved this coverage and deserved to be Ubers. Like, it should have been like 3 years, like not 3 years ago, but 3 gens ago. Anyways, yeah. Well, I guess now 4 gens ago, since we're in Gen 9. But yeah, that covers Kyurem. Goated mon. It deserved everything and more. This mon should have got Ice Punch, honestly, but Icicle Sphere is still good. So, I mean, Ice Punch would definitely would have just sent it to, you know, AG almost. I'm not going to say that much, but yeah, defensive checks. Buzzwole was, nah. I honestly, it's tough to say Buzzwole too, because at the time, I don't remember if Buzzwole really had like, I mean, it was just starting to get it was just starting to get usage when Zygarde was really prominent. That was when Buzzwole was really around. Like when Zygarde was around, that was when Buzzwole was around. Honestly, but yeah, Buzzwole didn't really cover for Kyurem like that. It was okay, but it didn't really help that much. And yeah, everything else just got bodied. So yeah, the Mass Spectre. So this is the only time in history where we have a ghost type that just spams Shadow Ball and just gets banned. It's crazy, right? I know, it's insane. This mon beats everything. You have Wisp and you just Shadow Ball everything. Like, you Shadow Ball all the dark types and you just keep spamming Shadow Ball. That's all you have to do. Just burn things, burn the dark types, and you just Shadow Ball them, and then you win. That's what this mon did, and it won. There were some nasty sets this thing did, like, of course, Nasty Plot sub. So you had sub Nasty Plot with Hex. So you had that going for you. You had the Scarf set. You had the Spec set. Spec set went crazy. Went stupid on everything. But yeah, now this mon apparently in Scarlet and Violet has coverage for dark types now. So this mon is going to be even faster. It's going to be getting out of OU even faster now. So that's going to be a lot of fun to see. Once it drops anyway. But yeah, Scarf was pretty good on it. You had the the Nasty Plot set too, and Specs was really good as well. Yeah, essentially once you burn the dark type, Spectre wins. So that's really what it came down to. There really weren't that many checks to it. Weavile, nah, there weren't that many checks. You can't say T-Tar. You can't. I'm sorry. You can't say T-Tar. it wasn't a check. It just got destroyed, unfortunately. Yeah, unfortunately, it just got destroyed. I mean, its speed is also like really high too. Again, being base 130. So when it came to like revenge killing it, like you could argue again Dragapult. But if it's yeah, pretty much Dragapult. But if it's Scarf, then well, haha, you lose. You lose. But yeah, this thing being like one of the faster Scarfers in the tier, or again, it being potentially one of the fastest Scarfers in the tier, couldn't really, like stop it. So yeah. And even if you have priority, there could be a Lele there too. So yeah, this mon was almost unbeatable, really. And again, that's saying a lot with it just spamming Shadow Ball a lot, or Hex a lot. But yeah, this mon was disgusting. Then we have the Galar Birds. I'm not gonna. This is just opinionated, so I'm gonna get my thoughts on these two. I prefer these two. I mean, these two are the better ones, obviously. Unfortunately, Gardecuno did not get what I thought it would. I remember when I was predicting these guys, I was thinking, oh, these guys are going to be so busted. They're going to have like great coverage options. They're going to be so cool and everything. But then look at how their move pools ended up being. It was not what I expected. I honestly thought that these guys would get coverage that was relevant, that was relating to their prior forms. Like I thought Galar Zapdos would get electric coverage. I thought Galar Molt would get fire coverage. I even thought, Gardecuno would get ice coverage, but no, they are completely different mons. Sure, their signature moves have references to their previous forms, but all in all, like, they are completely different mons separately. So yeah. Anyways, Gyapdos was cool. Choice Band was nice on it. I remember trying some other weird stuff like Bulk Up Agility, and it was pretty good too. But really like in the beginning, it was Choice Band and Choice Scarf all the way, and it worked fairly well too. Again, having Defiant with this thing, being able to come in on Landos was pretty fun too. Or even coming in on stat drops from like, honestly, really the stat drop from like, even if from opposing Gyapdos is cool too, because again, you drop their defense, or their defense drops your defense, and you get the +2 boost as well. So you can just Brape or whatever would come in. So it was essentially just a mon you would trade with a lot. But yeah, you got Scarf on it. Scarf was pretty fun. Choice Band was good too. And yeah, that was pretty much like in the early days of the meta. I don't know how it is nowadays. I don't know if it's still running. I don't know if it's still running Choice Scarf. I'm pretty sure it's just Choice Band all the way now. With the way the meta has settled. But yeah, there were some cool things it had. It has Stomping Tantrum too. So this mon having ground coverage, ground fighting, and flying coverage was still really cool. But again, like, for me personally, I would have loved to see this thing get electric coverage so it could actually hit like waters a little bit harder. But it is what it is. Like, this thing, if this thing had Bolt Beak, bro, greatest mon of all time right here. But that was not the case. Goltrace though, Goltrace wasn't as disappointing as Gyapdos, just because like Berserk is pretty nice on this thing. So I want to say that I use this more than Gyapdos, but that's I don't know, that's kind of blasphemous almost. But yeah, Nasty Plot was pretty good on it. Again, the bulky Nasty Plot set was nice. I liked using this thing a lot. I remember pairing it with Melmetal and Kieran Black in the early days of Crown Tundra. But it was really fun. So Nasty Plot stuff was really cool with it. Nasty Plot, Fiery Wrath, Hurricane. Didn't have Roost. I mean, all the birds don't have Roost. All the Galar birds don't have Roost. So I mean, it's not like they all needed it. Like, I mean, Gyapdos not having Roost was okay. I feel like Goltrace and Gardecuno should have had it though. But I mean, Gardecuno already has Recover, so there's that. But Goltrace should have had his own recovery, but it's fine. Anyways, a dual dance set was pretty fun too. So Nasty Plot plus Agility, or again, like, Nasty Plot, Fire Dance, Hurricane, and whatever other move you want to put on it. Sub as well, so you could get yourself down to your berry and whatnot. And that way you could get off your Berserk. So yeah, it was pretty good at that. It was pretty fun. It was a very fun mon. I really like this mon a lot. But yeah, essentially this mon was built to be a dual dancing set. So yeah. It was very good in breaking through a lot of different cores. Like, you have Fire Dance to break through the steel types, and Hurricane covered everything else as well. So yeah, that pretty much covers that. All right, so next, how much time do I have? Ew, you know what? How do I want to do this? I think for now I'm just gonna end off part 1, and then I'll go into part 2, like as soon as I can. But yeah, there really was a lot to cover here. There really was a lot to cover here, but yeah, essentially, like, the Sword and Shield meta so far, or as of, really, like, from what I've, like, summed up so far, like, it wasn't a bad metagame. It wasn't like a bad metagame. It was a very experimental metagame, actually, I'd say. I do wish some of the stronger monsters stay a little bit longer, like, Darm staying a little bit longer, and same with Cinderace. Well, Cinderace, I think, kind of lived up its time, really. But I do agree, or I do think that, stuff like Darm could have stayed a little bit longer, just to really see where things would have ended up post home. But I still think the mod would have been busted anyway. Like, having Kyurem and Darm on the same team sounds stupid, so maybe I should take that back. I should probably take that back. But yeah, again, I'm gonna be back, and I'll continue with this as soon as I can. But for now, hope you guys did enjoy this first part. If you guys did, please make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Join my Discord, the Bushido Gang, and subscribe for some more content on the channel. And yeah, I will be back as soon as I can to cover for the last bit of this, and then that's going to be the end of Sword and Shield. Be safe, wash your hands, and peace out.